Hello, church family. I'm here today to discuss 1 Samuel 11 with you. It covers the rescue of a town called Jabesh in Gilead, and it was rescued by the newly minted king Saul. The chapter begins with a general named Nahash in the country of Ammon. He came up to fight against the men of Jabesh Gilead. The Ammonites were descendants of Lot and were old enemies of the Israelites. Alleging that Israel had taken possession of the territory east of the Jordan, which rightfully belonged to them. The men of Jabesh Gilead wanted to make a peace treaty agreement. However, Nahash said it would cost them their right eye. Nahash's purpose in putting out the right eye of his enemies was not an uncommon thing to do in that day. This wound made a conquered nation easier to control. It testified to the conqueror's superior power. Specifically, it made aiming arrows with the right eye nearly impossible and therefore precluded a military revolt. Nahash's willingness to let his enemies appeal for help shows that he really had no fear of them overcoming him. He was sure of his superiority and may have even viewed the delay as an opportunity to ensure victory. At this time, Israel lacked a central government, any national solidarity, or a standing army. However, Saul was now their king, and they had also forgotten God's promises to protect them since they were his people. Their reaction was a result of viewing a situation from a worldly viewpoint and natural perspective, which is something we all do all the time. Jabesh Gilead wanted 7 days to consider plucking out their right eyes, thinking that they, the Israelites, had no chance to overcome Nahash. So they took the conundrum back to Saul, and Saul was at home farming on his land, even though he had just been pronounced king by Samuel. And so he's just out there doing his regular thing instead of acting like a king, which really showed a lot of humility. But a lot of that reason that he was out there was because God had not really told him what to do yet. So since he didn't know what to do, he just kept doing what he always did and took care of his land. He came out and told them that they would have to come out and fight, or they were going to have to face the consequences of Nahash. So they assembled 330,000 soldiers to fight, and they split up into 3 different companies, and they did destroy the Ammonites. In verse 6, the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon Saul when he heard of this crisis. He responded and reacted the way he did because God's Spirit rested on him and drove him. Without the Spirit of God's counsel and direction, you cannot be an effective leader. Israel was so happy with the leadership of Saul, they wanted to kill the men who said Saul shouldn't be king in the first place and that Saul couldn't deliver them. Saul ordered for no one to die that day in Israel because God had worked salvation in Israel. Instead, they all went to Gilgal to renew the manner of the new kingdom there. They rejoiced in their victory in salvation and sacrifice before their God. In many ways, Nahash represents everything our enemy, Satan, wants to do to us. He wants to intimidate us and force us to surrender to his evil plans. This story again represents a powerful illustration of how the enemy comes knocking at our door. He camps next to us, he intimidates us, and even negotiates with us to try and crush our faith. But God is bigger and always stronger, and we always need to put our trust in him and remember that he's the one there and he's in control and he always will protect us. I hope you have a great day, church.